The human envoy ship drifted silently through the glittering expanse of space, its polished hull reflecting the starlight of 1,000 distant suns. Inside, Captain Elias Renford studied the approaching planet, a world of crystalline towers that shimmered with colors humans had no names for. Every surface reflected not only light, but the sense of order and precision that governed the lives of its inhabitants, the Vieran. They were a people renowned across the quadrant for their unity, their collective consciousness, and the harmony of their civilization. Yet something about this particular mission made Elias uneasy. The diplomatic assignment had seemed simple on paper: make contact, learn about the Vieran culture, and establish a friendly relationship. But reports had hinted at a subtle tension within the royal court, a silent anomaly that humans seemed to sense almost instinctively. The anomaly was not in the planet's defenses, which were formidable, nor in its fleets, which were vast and well-coordinated. It was in the daughter of the queen herself, Princess Sailthira, a young woman whose presence seemed to stir quiet unease wherever she went. When the humans first arrived in the grand court, the air shimmered with a strange energy. The Vierlians moved gracefully, every motion precise, every glance shared telepathically among themselves. They were beautiful in a way humans could recognize but never fully emulate, tall, slender, with translucent skin that faintly reflected their surroundings. They spoke little, yet their words carried weight, and their thoughts seemed to ripple through the room. Captain Renford, flanked by his small team of diplomats and scientists, felt the pressure of being observed not only by eyes but by minds. The Queen entered, her presence commanding without shouting, her face serene yet unreadable. Her eyes, a deep violet that shimmered faintly like the surface of the planet itself, fixed on the humans. Behind her, Princess Sailthira remained slightly apart from the others, her posture tense yet not rebellious. She watched the humans with curiosity, as if trying to understand them before they even spoke. The humans noticed immediately that the princess's aura was different. Where the other Vierlians radiated the same quiet uniformity, Sailthira's presence seemed singular, distinct, almost fragile yet alive with a restless energy. The queen spoke first, her voice melodic but firm. "Why do you come to our court, humans?" Her question was simple, yet every word seemed layered with meaning. Elias stepped forward, bowing slightly as a gesture of respect. "Your Majesty, we come in peace. We seek friendship and knowledge. Our people wish to learn from yours and perhaps share what we have learned as well." "Tell me, humans, why do you approach her when we do not?" The question hung in the air, charged with an intensity that made even the human diplomats feel the weight of centuries of tradition. Elias hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Your daughter shows curiosity, a desire to understand. We do not fear difference. We see only a person who wishes to learn and connect. Or is it that I simply see the world differently?" Sailthira's variance, her ability to think and feel independently, had made her an outsider in a world that prized unity above all else. Elias approached her carefully, sensing the delicate balance between respect and interference. "Princess Sailthira," he said, "we do not judge you for being different. On our world, we have long learned that individuals who see the world differently are often the ones who change it for the better. Your courage is not a flaw, it is a gift." The silence itself seemed to speak volumes. The human willingness to accept what the Vierlians rejected challenged the very foundation of their society. As the delegation continued through the crystal halls, Elias observed more closely the subtle signs of the princess's isolation. The other Vierlians moved as one, communicating silently, their thoughts and emotions intertwined in a network that left no room for divergence. Sailthira walked among them, yet apart, her steps confident but solitary. Humans were drawn to her not by duty or obligation, but by instinct. Something in her reminded them of their own history, of a time when individuality had been feared and shunned. In a private chamber, the humans and the princess finally spoke alone. "Why do they fear me so?" she asked quietly, her voice barely more than a whisper. Elias sat across from her, leaning forward with gentle attention. "They fear what they do not understand," he said simply. "On our world, we too once feared those who thought differently. But we learned that those differences are what drive progress, creativity, and survival. You are not broken. You are extraordinary. That alone can change the way you see yourself." Her gaze swept the room, sharp and evaluating. "You speak freely with my daughter. Do you not fear our customs human? And if her differences bring disaster, will your people still speak so boldly?" Around them, the crystal walls reflected their images, the humans and the Vieran together, united in a fragile but undeniable moment of understanding. Though the court would not yet fully accept the princess, something had shifted. The human presence, their willingness to treat the princess as a person rather than a problem, had begun to crack the barriers that had confined her for so long. As the humans were escorted to their quarters, Selthira lingered by the window, gazing at the stars stretching endlessly beyond the crystal towers. "They see me," she whispered to herself. "They do not fear me." "You are not alone." A seed had been planted, one that might one day grow into something the galaxy had never seen before. A world that embraced the courage of individuality, the power of choice, and the quiet strength of being human. The night stretched on, quiet and luminous. Outside, the stars burned brightly, indifferent to the politics and customs of any one world. Yet inside, in that small chamber of crystal and reflection, a human and a Vieran princess began to rewrite the story of a civilization, one simple truth at a time. Being different is not weakness. It is survival. It is courage. It is hope. The following morning, the Vieran court awoke under a soft, violet light that filtered through the crystalline towers, bathing the corridors in a glow that seemed both beautiful and unnatural. Princess Selthira moved through the halls with careful steps, aware of the eyes and minds that followed her silently. The court continued its rituals of unity, synchronized movements, and shared thoughts, but she walked alone, aware that her mind did not flow with theirs. Humans accompanied her, observing quietly, yet providing the subtle presence of reassurance she had never felt before. Captain Elias Renford, along with diplomat Marrakesh and linguist Dr. Lin, had chosen to walk beside her, not to guide, but to witness. To them, she was a remarkable being, a symbol of what it meant to be human in a galaxy that valued conformity over courage. In the grand hall, the queen convened a meeting of the highest counselors. The chamber was circular, crystal walls stretching up into a ceiling that reflected the stars above. Counselors moved as one, each gesture mirrored and understood across their linked consciousness. Yet Selthira did not join the synchronized motions, her hands did not rise in unison, her mind did not hum with the others. To the court, this was a flaw, a dangerous flaw, but the humans saw it differently. "They will never understand you," Elias whispered as they waited. "Their fear is not of you, but of what you represent." To act differently, to think alone, could bring consequences she had never fully imagined. The humans, however, did not seem afraid. Their presence was a shield against the judgment that would have otherwise crushed her spirit. The council meeting began, and the queen's voice rang out. "Princess Selthira has chosen to act apart from the collective. Humans claim this is not a fault." "Explain, human, why you value this behavior." Elias stepped forward, speaking carefully, knowing that every word would be scrutinized by minds far more sensitive than any human could imagine. "Your Majesty, your daughter sees the world as it is, not merely as the collective imagines it. Her independence is not weakness, it is strength. In the universe beyond this planet, survival depends on seeing clearly and acting decisively, often when others hesitate. If she acts alone, she risks endangering all. She will expand your understanding, if given the chance." Later, in the private gardens of the palace, Selthira walked among crystalline flowers that glowed faintly with their own light. The humans followed, giving her space but remaining near enough to respond if needed. She paused beside a small pond, watching the ripples distort the reflection of the sky above. "They fear me," she said softly, almost to herself. "They fear what I could do if I think alone. And yet, if I fail, if I make a mistake, they will never forgive me. They will never accept me. And the truth is that your strength lies in being yourself, not in being what they expect." Humans had shown her something her people could not. That individuality was not shame, but power. The next day, the humans observed the princess interacting with her tutors and advisors. Unlike the rest of the Vierlians, who processed lessons through shared thought, Selthira asked questions no one expected. She challenged accepted norms gently, probing for understanding rather than confrontation. The tutors, initially hesitant, began to respond cautiously, unsure how to treat a student who could not be guided by collective consensus. "You must be careful," one of the older advisors warned. "If your questions spread, others may follow. That would disrupt the order." Selthira's words had created a small but undeniable fracture. That evening, the humans returned to their quarters, but Selthira lingered in the gardens. She traced her fingers along the edges of a crystal flower, thinking of the strange new world that had opened to her. She wondered how long it would take before her people could understand what humans had shown her. The following days brought more subtle tests. The court introduced new protocols designed to measure her ability to function independently without endangering the collective. Selthira faced each with quiet determination, guided by humans who offered insight but never interfered. In every test, her mind worked differently, faster in some ways, slower in others, but always with creativity that none of the Vierlians could predict. One evening, as the twin moons of the planet rose in the sky, Selthira and Elias walked along a balcony overlooking the city below. "Your people may not yet see your worth," Elias said, "but I do. And one day they will. You will find a way, and humanity will stand with you quietly if needed." Though fear remained, curiosity began to take root. Selthira began to understand that humans had given her more than support. They had given her a vision where difference was not a curse but a tool, a vision where courage and independence could coexist with the collective, shaping a future no Vierlian had dared imagine. Yet the shadow of uncertainty remained. The queen watched from afar, her expression unreadable. She had seen the humans encourage her daughter, seen Selthira take small steps toward independence, and yet she could not dismiss the ancient fear ingrained in her people. The tension between tradition and chain hung over the court like a storm ready to break. In the quiet moments, Selthira often returned to the pond, staring at the reflection of stars and towers. She wondered what her life would be like if humans had never come, if she had never seen that courage could exist beyond the collective. Perhaps she would have remained shunned, a silent observer of a world that rejected her. Perhaps she would have resigned herself to invisibility, lost in the perfection of the Vierlian hive. But now, with humans by her side and her own resolve growing stronger, she felt something shift within her. The fear of isolation was still there, but it no longer defined her. She realized that the first step toward changing her world was simply to exist as she was, fully and without apology. And in that realization, the first spark of true possibility emerged. Selthira was no longer just a princess shunned by her own people. She was a force, a mind unbound, a heart open, and a presence that might one day redefine the very meaning of unity. Outside, the city continued its rhythmic dance of synchronized thought, unaware that a quiet revolution had already begun in its midst. Selthira walked among the stars and crystals with humans at her side, learning the power of courage, the strength of individuality, and the subtle but unbreakable bond that forms when truth is spoken and heard. The court might not yet accept her, the queen might still hesitate, and the collective might resist, but a seed had been planted. And like all seeds, it had the potential to grow beyond anyone's control into something extraordinary. Selthira closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the cool breeze that whispered through the crystal towers. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future not limited by fear or conformity. She could not yet see the full path, but she knew it existed. And she was ready to walk it, step by step, with humanity quietly guiding her, and perhaps one day leading her people into a world that could embrace both individuality and unity. The night stretched endlessly, shimmering with violet and silver light. Inside the heart of the Vierlian court, a quiet revolution had begun. Not with weapons, not with force, but with the simple, unyielding courage of one girl who dared to be herself, and the humans who believed in her. The days following the private lessons and quiet discussions passed in an uneasy rhythm. Princess Selthira moved through the crystalline halls with a growing confidence, her mind sharper than ever, her curiosity unrelenting. But beneath the surface, the court's unease had begun to deepen. Subtle whispers flowed between counselors, flickers of unease crossed faces that had once been perfectly controlled. The humans watched silently, understanding that this tension was a symptom of something far larger, a fracture in a society that had never before faced true individuality within its own ranks. It began with a routine communication between the Vierlian fleets stationed near the planet's orbit. Normally, the synchronized fleet would operate with perfect cohesion, each ship responding instantly to the collective will of the Council. But that morning, something strange occurred. One ship hesitated, then another, then a cluster of them, until the entire fleet seemed frozen, their usual precision lost. The Vierlians had never experienced hesitation before. Their shared consciousness was a fortress, but today it had become a trap. Panic spread quickly through the court, silent yet palpable. Counselors attempted to coordinate their mental commands, but the collective consciousness, normally flawless, stumbled. Sailthera, watching from the observation deck, felt the tension like a physical weight pressing against her chest. She did not hesitate. Where the collective failed, she could still think freely. Her mind was independent, capable of action without the need for consensus. Elias Renford stepped beside her, observing the flickers of fear across the Vieran faces. "They are frozen," he said. "They cannot act together. Something is happening that their unity cannot solve." "Then I will act alone," she said, and there was no doubt in her voice. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the moment humans had quietly guided her toward. The council might not yet trust her, the queen might not yet accept her, but her skills and her mind were ready. The first step was communication with the fleet. Using the tactical consoles, Sailthera analyzed the signals and patterns that the collective should have coordinated. Her approach was different. She relied on intuition, on analysis that had no precedent in the Vieran system. Her hands moved across the controls, issuing commands directly to individual ships, bypassing the usual shared consciousness. At first, the council gasped. To act outside the collective was unthinkable. It was dangerous. It could have ended in disaster. But as the ships responded, adjusting their positions and engaging defensive protocols, a ripple of astonishment spread. Where the collective faltered, Sailthera's independence created solutions. Her quick thinking allowed them to anticipate the threat. An asteroid storm engineered by a rival civilization, one that had studied the Vieran fleet and sought to exploit its reliance on unity. The storm's approach was sudden and relentless, massive chunks of rock and debris hurtling toward the fleet. The Vierlians, paralyzed by their own synchronization, could not react in time. Sailthera's mind worked rapidly, calculating trajectories, predicting collisions, and issuing commands that the fleet could follow individually. Slowly, then more confidently, the ships moved out of harm's way. The humans watched in awe, knowing that this moment would change everything. Elias stepped closer to her, his voice steady but urgent. "Princess, this is dangerous. They may not forgive deviation, even if it saves them." Communication lines, normally uniform and collective, were now alive with individual coordination, each ship responding directly to her commands. For the first time, the humans saw the raw power of independent thought in a Vieran context. It was dangerous, unpredictable, and brilliant. From the observation deck, the queen watched, her expression unreadable yet tense. She saw her daughter issuing commands without hesitation, her mind moving faster than any collective calculation. For the first time, the queen understood that her fears of independence might have been misplaced. Sailthera's ability to think alone had turned what could have been disaster into survival. Hours passed, the storm finally passing by the fleet with minimal damage. The court remained silent, absorbing the consequences of what had just occurred. Sailthera stepped away from the controls, exhausted but steady. Elias placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You did it," he said simply. "Yes," she whispered, her mind still racing with calculations and strategies. "But they may never forgive me." "You acted without the collective," she said quietly, a note of awe in her voice. "You risked everything to save them. Why?" The humans waited, knowing that the truth had been revealed in the most undeniable way. The queen's face softened slightly, a flicker of understanding crossing her features. "You are not like us," the queen said, her voice low, almost to herself. "You see differently, you act differently. And sometimes that is exactly what is needed." Later, in a quiet chamber away from the court, Sailthera spoke with the humans. "They may fear me even more now," she said, her voice tinged with concern. "They may," Elias admitted. "But you have proven something far more important, that being different does not mean being weak. You have shown strength that their collective cannot match." Her independence was no longer a liability. It was a tool, a weapon, and a gift. The humans had guided her to this understanding, but she realized that the path forward was hers alone to walk. The queen summoned her again that night, a private audience in the high towers overlooking the city. "Tell me," she said quietly, "how did you act when all others could not? How did you find a solution that we, the collective, could not?" For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a world where difference was not danger but strength. "And if others could think as you do?" she asked softly. Sailthera's lips curved in a small, hopeful smile. "Then our civilization would survive anything because we would have both unity and independence. We would have choice and courage." Counselors, tutors, and advisors began to reconsider their approach to the princess. They could not yet fully embrace her independence, but they could no longer treat it as weakness. Salthera had demonstrated that courage, creativity, and decisive action mattered more than perfect unity in the face of danger. Humans remained quietly at her side, offering support and guidance without interference. Their presence was a steady reminder that independence was not isolation, and that strength often comes from courage and trust, rather than conformity. Salthera felt a quiet pride growing within her. She had survived not by hiding or pretending, but by embracing her difference fully. The storm had revealed what humans had known all along: being different was not a flaw. It was a path to survival, to excellence, and to changing the world itself. And as the stars continued to shine above the crystalline towers, the princess began to understand her true power. The future of her people, and perhaps even the galaxy, might one day depend on it. She was no longer just a shunned daughter. She was a force that could not be ignored, a mind unbound, and a heart that had learned the courage to act when all others hesitated. The days after the storm passed slowly, each one stretching longer than the last in the crystal corridors of the Vieran palace. The court moved with caution now, as if the world itself had shifted slightly, leaving everyone uncertain of their place. Counselors whispered among themselves, their thoughts carefully measured, and advisors cast glances at Princess Salthera, some curious, some wary, and some quietly admiring. The queen remained distant, her face serene but her mind restless, pondering what she had just witnessed. Salthera moved through her morning routines with the calm confidence that had begun to define her. The humans were always nearby, though they never imposed, their presence steady and reassuring. Captain Elias Renford, Marrakesh, and Dr. Lin had become more than guides. They were allies, silent champions of her courage and independence. Their quiet support gave her a strength she could now feel in her chest, steady and unwavering. The queen summoned a private meeting that day, a rare occurrence that immediately caught the attention of the court. Salthera entered the high chamber with measured steps, aware that every movement would be observed and analyzed. The humans accompanied her, maintaining their respectful distance. The queen's violet eyes were fixed on her daughter, searching, questioning, and for the first time, perhaps learning to wonder. "You have acted again without the collective," the queen said quietly, her voice both stern and thoughtful. "Your actions have saved lives, yet they defy everything we hold sacred. Tell me why you persist." "Doing nothing would destroy more than you can measure. I wish only to be seen as I am, to act when others cannot, and to help our people survive. I am still your daughter, but I am also someone who must think and act independently. That is my nature. That is what humans have taught me." She studied Salthera as if seeing her for the first time, realizing that the very traits she had feared might also be her greatest strength. The room was silent for long moments, the weight of unspoken understanding pressing on everyone present. Outside the palace, subtle changes began to ripple through the city. Tutors approached Salthera with a new sense of respect, cautiously offering her ideas and seeking her opinion. Counselors, previously rigid in their adherence to collective consensus, began to consider her suggestions in private discussions. The humans observed this quietly, understanding that the seeds of change were slowly taking root. One afternoon, as the twin moons of the planet rose high, casting their silver light across the crystalline towers, a new crisis emerged. Reports came in from the outskirts of the system. A rival civilization, previously thought to be neutral, had begun probing the planet's defenses. Their ships moved with precision, seeking weaknesses in the Vieran fleets and testing the limits of their synchronized strategy. The council convened immediately, but unlike before, hesitation crept in, fear whispered through the network. Salthera stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "I will handle this. We cannot wait for hesitation. We must act now." But action, courage, and intelligence could show them the truth more clearly than words ever could. She moved to the tactical console, analyzing the enemy formations, calculating trajectories, and predicting strategies. Unlike the collective, which had relied on uniform thinking, her mind moved freely, connecting ideas and possibilities that the Vierlians could not see as a group. Orders were issued. Ships moved independently, responding to Salthera's commands rather than waiting for consensus. Each maneuver was calculated, precise, yet adaptive. Where the collective would have faltered, her independence allowed for flexibility. The rival ships, expecting predictable patterns from the Vierlian fleet, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. From the observation deck, the queen watched in awe. Her daughter, once shunned for thinking differently, now led the fleet with clarity and decisiveness. The humans stood beside Sailthera, quiet and watchful, knowing that this moment would redefine the perception of what it meant to be strong and what it meant to be human in the galaxy. Hours passed, and the crisis subsided without a single major loss. The rival ships retreated, unable to breach the defenses that had been reinforced not by unity, but by independent action guided by courage and intelligence. Sailthera's calm yet commanding presence had saved the day, and in the silent aftermath, the full impact of her actions began to settle on the court. The queen summoned her daughter once more, this time to a chamber that overlooked the city. "I have watched you act," she said softly, her voice tinged with emotion. "I have seen what you can do when others cannot. I see now that my fears were misplaced. You are not a danger, you are a necessity. I do not seek to replace the collective, only to protect it when it cannot act." Their mission had been simple: support the princess and allow her to realize her potential. And now they could see the truth reflected in the eyes of a queen who had begun to understand the value of individuality within a collective civilization. Over the following weeks, small but profound changes began to take shape. Advisors who had once treated Sailthera with caution now sought her counsel. Counselors began to incorporate her suggestions into fleet strategies and urban planning, recognizing the value of independent thought alongside collective coordination. Even the citizens of the city, observing the subtle shifts from afar, began to see the princess not as an anomaly to be shunned, but as a leader to be respected. Sailthera herself felt a growing confidence, tempered with humility. She understood that change would be slow, that acceptance could not be forced, and that true leadership required patience as well as courage. But she also knew that she had taken the first steps toward transforming a civilization that had once rejected her. One evening, as the twin moons cast a pale light across the palace gardens, the queen approached her daughter without the formality that had always separated them. "Tell me," she said quietly, "how do you do what you do? How can you see solutions when others cannot?" "I act when hesitation would cost lives, that is all. I will lead alongside them, showing what can be done when courage and choice guide our actions." In the days that followed, the court slowly adjusted. Council meetings allowed for individual voices alongside the collective chorus. Fleet strategies incorporated independent command alongside synchronized action. Sailthera continued to guide the princess's tutors, advisors, and eventually, the counselors themselves, demonstrating through quiet competence the power of courage and creativity. The humans, as always, observed without interference, satisfied that their presence had fostered not only the princess's growth, but the beginning of a societal transformation. Humanity's influence was subtle yet undeniable, showing that courage, truth, and independent thinking could thrive even in a civilization built on perfect unity. Sailthera walked through the palace one evening, her mind alive with strategies and ideas, her heart steady with purpose. The city below shimmered under the twin moons, a reflection of a civilization on the cusp of change. She had faced fear, isolation, and doubt, yet she had emerged not just intact, but stronger, guiding others by example and action. The queen approached once more, silently, and together they stood overlooking the city. "You have shown me the truth," the queen said softly. "Perhaps it was humans who taught us, but it is you who led the way. I see now that courage is not weakness, choice is not danger, independence can be strength. The rest is up to our people, and to the future we will build together." Humanity, quietly, had helped guide the first steps toward a future where unity and independence could coexist, where fear could be replaced by understanding, and where the galaxy might one day recognize that true strength often lies in the courage to act when all others hesitate. Sailthera smiled, feeling the warmth of possibility ripple through her. The journey was far from over, but the first victories had been won. The seeds of change were taking root, nurtured by courage, wisdom, and the quiet guidance of those who had seen her potential from the beginning. And for the first time, she realized that she was not alone, not in her courage, not in her actions, and not in her ability to shape the future. Humanity had shown her the way, and together they were beginning to change the world. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet but powerful change. The Vieran court, once rigid and flawless in its unity, began to adapt to a new reality, one in which independence and courage were not threats, but essential strengths. Princess Sailthera moved through the palace with growing confidence, her presence no longer a source of whispered fear, but of cautious respect. Her mind, sharp and fearless, became a guiding force for those around her, and even the counselors who had once doubted her now sought her insight. The humans remained at her side, a constant source of quiet encouragement. Captain Elias Renford often watched from a distance, noting how the princess had grown, how she now spoke with authority yet with humility, and how she inspired others without demanding it. Marrakesh and Dr. Lin observed the subtle shifts in the court, knowing that the seed of transformation they had helped plant was taking root in ways that even they had not anticipated. One morning, alarms rang throughout the palace. A massive fleet had been detected approaching the system, larger and more aggressive than any previous threat. The Vieran defenses, while strong, relied heavily on collective coordination, and any disruption could be catastrophic. Counselors gathered in the central hall, their minds linked in tense synchronization, but uncertainty rippled through them. Hesitation, even a moment's delay, could mean disaster. Selthira stepped forward, her expression calm yet determined. "We will face them," she said. "We will not wait for hesitation. We must act with courage and clarity." "I will lead." Enemy ships advanced with precision, expecting predictable responses from the Vieran fleet. But Selthira's commands were unexpected, adaptive, and decisive. She guided ships individually, bypassing the collective when necessary, and her choices created openings that had never existed before. The queen watched from the observation chamber, her violet eyes wide with both fear and awe. Her daughter, once shunned for thinking differently, now commanded with clarity and brilliance. Each move was calculated yet flexible, every decision showing not just skill but courage. The humans stood nearby, observing but not interfering, their trust in her complete. Hours passed as the battle raged. The Vieran fleet, following Selthira's guidance, moved with a coordination the enemy could not predict. Where the collective might have faltered, her independent decisions created opportunities for victory. Enemy ships were outmaneuvered, forced to retreat, and the threat was neutralized without major loss to the Vieran forces. As silence returned to the observation chamber, the queen approached her daughter. Her voice was quiet, almost reverent. "You have done what none of us could. You have saved the fleet, saved lives, and shown us the power of independence. How did you know what to do?" "I thought, I acted, and I trusted that courage would guide me. I did not act alone. I acted with responsibility and with those who trusted me." For the first time, she saw the truth she had long resisted. That independence, courage, and the willingness to act when others hesitate were not threats to her civilization. They were its greatest strengths. Over the following days, the court shifted in ways that no one had expected. Council meetings began to include individual voices alongside the collective chorus. Fleet strategies now accounted for independent command alongside synchronized action. Tutors and advisors sought Selthira's counsel, and even the citizens of the city began to recognize her as a leader worthy of respect, not fear. The humans watched quietly, proud but unassuming, knowing that their guidance had helped the princess realize her potential, but had not interfered with the organic growth of change. Selthira herself felt a quiet pride. She understood that leadership was not about control or domination, but about courage, responsibility, and the ability to inspire others to act with integrity. Her uniqueness, once considered a flaw, was now recognized as a strength that could shape the future of her people. One evening, the queen summoned her daughter to the high towers, overlooking the shimmering city below. "You have shown me what I feared to see," she said softly. "Your courage, your independence, your ability to act, these are qualities I once thought dangerous. Now I see they are necessary. You have led us into a future we could not have imagined. You have shown us all that strength is not only in unity, but also in courage, choice, and responsibility. Your example will shape the future of our civilization." Humanity had always survived through courage, independent thought, and the willingness to act despite fear. And now, the Vierlians were learning the same lesson, guided not by force or coercion, but by the quiet power of example. In the following months, the court underwent profound changes. Counselors learned to value individual insight alongside collective wisdom. Fleet strategies incorporated flexibility, allowing for both synchronized and independent action. Tutors encouraged independent thinking among students. Citizens began to see difference as a strength rather than a weakness. The Vierlian civilization, once rigid and uniform, was slowly evolving into something more adaptable, resilient, and wise. Selthira continued her work, guiding, advising, and leading where necessary. Her bond with the humans remained strong, but she now understood that her greatest strength lay not in their support, but in her own courage, judgment, and determination. She had faced fear, isolation, and doubt, and she had emerged stronger, proving that being different was not weakness, it was power. The queen often observed her daughter in silence, reflecting on the lessons she had learned. She had feared difference, feared independence, and feared the unknown. Yet she now realized that those fears had been a barrier to growth and survival. Through Salthera, she saw that courage and choice could coexist with unity, creating a civilization stronger than any that relied solely on conformity. One night, as the twin moons cast their silver light over the crystalline towers, Salthera stood beside the humans, gazing at the stars that stretched endlessly above. "Do you think we can truly change them?" she asked quietly. Elias Renford smiled. "Change begins with courage, and you have shown more courage than any of us could have imagined. The rest will follow slowly but inevitably. Humanity has taught you one truth. The universe rewards those who act with courage, wisdom, and integrity. You are living proof of that." Yet for the first time, she felt certain that the future could be different, better, stronger, and full of possibilities her people had never imagined. In the days that followed, the Queen called a council meeting unlike any before. Each counselor, once bound entirely by the collective, was encouraged to speak individually. Suggestions, questions, and proposals flowed freely, guided by Salthera's insight and tempered by the wisdom of the collective. Decisions were made with flexibility, creativity, and courage. The humans observed quietly, proud of the princess who had transformed not only her own destiny, but the future of an entire civilization. The first step toward a new era had been taken. Salthera, once shunned, had become a leader whose independence was respected, whose courage inspired, and whose actions saved lives. The queen, once fearful and hesitant, now fully recognized the truth. Her daughter was not broken, she was extraordinary. Humanity's quiet influence had shown the way, and now the Vieran themselves were beginning to understand that strength, courage, and choice were gifts to be cherished, not feared. As the weeks turned into months, the city below the palace shimmered with life and possibility. Citizens moved with renewed confidence, guided by leaders who had learned to balance unity with independent thought. The fleet remained vigilant, now capable of coordinated action and independent initiative. The court, once rigid and fearful, had begun to embrace a future shaped by courage and responsibility. Salthera walked through the palace gardens one evening, her thoughts drifting over the months of change. She had faced doubt, fear, and rejection, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The humans walked beside her, silent companions in her journey, a reminder that courage and wisdom often thrive in the company of those who believe in you. The queen approached quietly, her gaze reflecting both pride and wonder. "You have taught us all a lesson," she said softly. "Courage, choice, and independence are not threats, they are strengths. Humanity has shown us the truth, but you have made it real. The rest is up to all of us." The humans, quietly guiding but never imposing, had shown her that the universe rewards those who act boldly, wisely, and with integrity. And as the twin moons rose high above the city, Salthera understood the truth that had been quietly taught to her by humanity. True strength lies not in perfection, not in conformity, but in courage, choice, and the willingness to act when all others hesitate. She was no longer alone. She was no longer shunned. She was a force for change, a living example of what it means to be human in the truest sense. Brave, compassionate, and unafraid to speak the truth. The future of the Vieran civilization, once rigid and predictable, now glimmered with possibilities as endless as the stars above. And in the quiet of the palace gardens, Princess Salthera smiled, ready to embrace it all.